Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Welcome to online classes of Sambal Hazrat Fazal Kubra Radiyallahu Ta'ala Anha Mahila Dakhil Madrasa. Dear viewers, dear learners, dear students and honorable guardians, I hope you are fine by the grace of Almighty Allah, and I am also fine by the pleasure of Allah. As it is passing the world pandemic coronavirus situations, government has taken some necessary steps to continue our regular study. Online class is one of them. I am Muhammad Halal, assistant teacher, Sambal Hazrat Fazal Kubra Radiyallahu Ta'ala Anha Mahila Dakhil Madrasa, and your online tutors. Today our topic is English grammar class 9-10. So let's start, student. Then today our topic is transformation of sentences, affirmative to negative, interchange of affirmative and negative sentence. Dear student, we have to follow some rules and we have to memorize some keywords. Let's begin. Dear student, we use never instead of always. If we find the word always in affirmative sentence, we will write the word never instead of that word always and make opposite word of verb, adjective and noun at the time of negative sentence. For example, I will always remember you. Here, always change to never. I will never forget you. He is always present. Here, always change to never. He is never. And present change to opposite word absent. You should always speak the truth. Here, always change to never. And speak and truth change to ally. Dear student, we use not instead of sometimes, not always instead of sometimes. If we find the word sometime in affirmative sentence, we will write the word not always instead of that word sometimes and make opposite word of verb, adjective and noun at the time of negative sentence. For example, he sometimes smokes. He doesn't always smoke. Here, sometimes change to not always. The risks are sometimes heavy. The risks are not always heavy. A scholar is sometimes wrong. A scholar is not always right. Dear student, we use cannot but or cannot help instead of must. If we find the word must in affirmative sentence, we will write the word cannot but or cannot help instead of that word must at the time of negative sentence. For example, he must buy a grammar book. He cannot but buy a grammar book. Here must change to cannot but. Dear student, we use no instead of all. If we find the word all in the affirmative sentence, we will write the word no instead of that word all and make opposite word of verb, adjective and noun at the time of negative sentence. For example, all men are mortal. No man is immortal. Here all change to no and mortal change to opposite word immortal. All must die, no one can escape that. For good, forever, since to never, opposite word of verb. If we find the word for good or forever in affirmative sentence, we'll write the word never instead of that word for good, forever, and make opposite word of verb at the time of negative sentence. For example, I have sold the house forever. I will never buy the house. Here, forever since to never. He has left the place forever. He will never come the place again. In the sentence, forever since to will never. We use no instead of every. If we find the word every in affirmative sentence, we'll write the word no instead of that word every and make opposite word of verb and adjective at the time of negative sentence. For example, everybody is dependent. Nobody is independent. Here, every is changed to no and dependent changed to opposite word independent. Everyone loves flower. Everyone changed to no one and loves changed to opposite word hates. We use cannot but have bar plus ing instead of have to has to. If we find the word have to has to in affirmative sentence, we will write the word cannot but oblique cannot but have bar plus ing instead of that word have to has to at the time of negative sentence. For example, I have to buy a new house. I cannot but buy a new house. Here have to says to cannot but. Here by words is missing. No sooner had then instead of as soon as. No sooner had then instead of as soon as. If you find the word as soon as in affirmative sentence, we'll write the word no sooner had then instead of that word as soon as at the time of negative sentence. For example, as soon as I arrived house, it began to rain. No sooner had I arrived house, then it began to rain. Here, as soon as change to no sooner had, and this comma change to then. As soon as the man saw the tiger, he ran away. No sooner had the man seen the tiger, he ran away. Here, as soon as change to no sooner had, and comma change to then. We use not a few instead of many. For example, I have many friends. I do not have a few friends. Here many change to a few. Not many instead of a few. For example, I have bought a few books. I have not bought many books. Here a few change to many. Not a little instead of much. If we find the word much in affirmative sentence, we will write the word not little instead of that word much at the time of negative sentence. For example, he wants much water. He does not want a little water. Here, much changes to a little. Rohim has sold much money. Rohim has not sold a little money. Here, much changes to a little. A little changes to not much. not much instead of a little. For example, I want a little milk. I do not want much milk. Here, a little seems to much. None but instead of only when only indicate person. If we find the word only after that any person in affirmative sentence, we will write the word none but instead of that word only at the time of negative sentence. For example, only God can save us. None but God can save us. Here, only says to none but. Only he can do the sum. None but he can do the sum. We replace only by none but. Only here we replace none by only by none but. Only since to nothing but when only indicate things. If we find the word only after that anything in affirmative sentence, we will write the word nothing but instead of that word only. For example, only the moon was visible. Nothing but the moon was visible. Here we replace only by nothing but. I played only cricket. Only is only replaced by nothing but. I played nothing by cricket. I like only mango. Only replaced by nothing but. Only number and age when only indicate number and age we use not more than or not less than. If we find the word only after that in number and age in affirmative sentence, we will write the word not more than or not less than instead of that word only at that time of negative sentence. For example, Sumaya is only 16 years old. Sumaya is not less than 16 years old. Here only says to not less than. You got only 50% marks in English. You got not more than 50% marks in English. We use not more than instead of only. Not only dot dot but also instead of both dot dot and. We use not only dot dot but also if we find the words both dot dot and in an affirmative sentence. For example, both Munning and Rohima were beautiful. Sorry. Both Munni and Rohima were beautiful. Not only Munni but also Rohima were beautiful. Here, first both change to not only and second and change to but also. Rohim is both honest and faithful. Here, both change to not only and change to but also. We use not less than or not comparative form of adjective instead of as dot dot as. For example, Rufali is as beautiful as Shonali. Here, Rufali is not less beautiful than Shonali. We use not less instead of first as and we use then instead of second as. Hassan is as strong as Karim. Hassan is not less strong than Karim. Here, as we use as is replaced by not less, and second as is replaced by then. We use never for the last time instead of for the last time. For example, I warn you for the last time. I shall never warn you again. Here for the last time says to never. Alone alone indicate person. When alone indicate person, we use none but instead of alone. For example, God alone can help me in this situation. Here alone says to none but Allah can help me in this situation. We use so that instead of to. If we find to in affirmative sentence, we'll use so that instead of that word to at the time of negative sentence. For example, he is too weak to walk. He is so weak that he cannot walk. Here, first to says to so, and that we use that instead of second to. The child was too tiny to climb up the tree. The child was so tiny that he could not climb the tree. Here, first TW2 says to so, and second to says to that. We use no other instead of superlative, the plus superlative. For example, Rahi is the best boy in the class. Here, the plus superlative, we use no other instead of the plus superlative, no other boy in the class. Therefore, then verb is as good as here Arun will replace. Sorry, here Arun will be Rahi. Sakib is the best man in Bangladesh. Here the plus superlative. No other best man in Bangladesh. Verb is as good as Sakib. Here the positive form of best is good. Then any other or then all other since to no other. We use no other instead of then any other or then all other. For example, Rahim is better than any other boy in the class. Then any other is replaced by no other. No other boy in the class. Verb is bad. Positive form of better is good. Is as good as Rahim. Dhaka is bigger than all other cities in Bangladesh. No other than all others, replaced by no other cities in Bangladesh is as big as Dhaka. Using helping verb plus not without. For example, you have power, you have not power. You have not without power. I hate you, I am not without hate for you. We use not fail to. He plays football. He does not fail to play football. Speak the truth. Don't fail to speak the truth. Making double negative. Every will be no and un will be added with verb. For example, he answered every question. He left no question unanswered. If the sentence are universal truth, here if the sentence are universal truth, you should make the sentence interrogative negative. For example, the sun rises in the east. Here the sentence is universal truth. The sun never rises in west, so it is universal truth fact. Universal truth fact or habitual fact should make sentence interrogative negative. Doesn't the sun rise in the east? The earth is round. Is not the earth round? Honesty is the best policy. Is not honesty the best policy? Is not honesty the best policy? Am is are was are plus adjective change to negative and opposite word of adjective. If we find the word am is are was are plus adjective in affirmative sentence, we will write the word not instead of that word am is are was are plus adjective and make opposite word of adjective at the time of negative sentence. For example, man is mortal, man is not immortal. Here is a helping verb. We bring not after helping verb and adjective and the following words change to opposite word. Mortal change to immortal as opposite word. She is present, she is not absent. Here present change to opposite word absent. So dear student, we have keywords to memorize the rules to interchange of sentence from affirmative to negative sentence in shortcut. We must memorize these keywords, and if we memorize this keyword, we will be able to change affirmative to negative. Here keyword are always, change to never, sometimes, not always, must, cannot but, all, no, for good, forever, never again, never, every, no, have to, has to, cannot but, as soon as, no sooner, had, then, many, not a few, not many, must, not a little, not much, only, person, none but, only things, nothing but, only number or age, not more than or not less than, would end, since to not only but also, as since to not less than or not comparative adjective then, never instead of for the last time, none but instead of alone, so that instead of two, superlative degree, the plus superlative says to no other than any other or then all other says to no other, using helping verb plus not without, using of not fail to, making double negative. If the sentence are universal truth or habitual fact, you should make the sentence interrogative negative. Am is are was are plus adjective since to negative and opposite word of adjective. Dear student, you will write these keywords in your exercise book and memorize these words to change affirmative to negative. Dear student, I hope you all enjoy this class. See you again next time. And till then, stay home, stay safe, and take care of yourself.